Joins us from our studio in New York to bring us the latest. And Anastasia, from what I understand, we just got word that that ruling will not come down until tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes, Christine, that's correct. Basically, what was scheduled to take place today was the prosecution to make a final statement before the jury gets together to decide on a verdict. Afterwards, followed by a speech from the defense. But apparently, they didn't have enough time to get this done in the so far 7 hours that they were gathered in court for. So we are expecting this to finalize tomorrow, although the jury will get together tomorrow. It's not exactly clear. Their verdict decision-making process could take up from minutes to several hours to even several days. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly how soon they're going to make up their minds.
So just so we're clear here, so closing arguments have been made for both sides, but we're still waiting for additional statements. Is that what you're telling me?
No, closing arguments have been made by the defense, and they're now expected to be made by the prosecution tomorrow, after which the jury will get together to make a decision.
Got it. So, Anastasia, I do want to talk about some of the history of this case. Just give our viewers a refresher course in terms of how this all shook down. This has been going on for several years now. And talk a little bit, too, about some of the controversial elements of this.
Well, you know, Christine, this has definitely been a pretty crazy case because apart from the details that you so wonderfully outlined in the introduction of the story, we have to keep in mind that the U.S. officials have been chasing Bout around and have been on a hunt for him for pretty much a decade. This started about 10 years ago when Bout was peacefully living in Moscow. The U.S. officials started pumping tens of millions of dollars into setting up this sting operation to hunt Bout down, because we have to keep in mind, of course, that when he was arrested in Thailand in 2008 and is now being charged with conspiring to cooperate with the FARC rebels, which are deemed terrorists by the United States and not by the United Nations, Russia, or Thailand, by the way, the people he was dealing with were actually covert special agents and not FARC group members by any means. So that's sort of one of the things that's been raising eyebrows in this case. And of course, the fact that he was really snatched away by the U.S. in the middle of the night, like in a Hollywood movie, from Thailand to the U.S., even though Thai courts found him not guilty twice, and his papers continued to technically still remain in Thailand. So the way he was brought here and basically, you know, hunted down for so long, it's really unclear why the U.S. would spend tens of millions of dollars on this one man.
And I know this case has been one of two or three major cases that we've been focused on. Another one is that of Konstantin Yaroshenko. Talk a little bit about you know, the two cases and some of the main points here going on here.
You know, Konstantin Yaroshenko is a great example to bring up because he was sentenced to 20 years behind bars this September. A man who was also snatched up from a third country, a Russian citizen, brought onto U.S. soil, where Yaroshenko particularly had never even stepped foot on U.S. soil before that incident. So certainly that case built a precedent where it became clear that the United States is not planning to really refrain from sentencing foreign citizens on its soil, regardless of whether or not they've been on U.S. territory. And we know this is, of course, not an exclusive example, but in Russia's case, this is certainly a great precedent in modern U.S.-Russian history. And with this Bout case, we're certainly going to wait and see whether or not this becomes a similar scenario.
And just finally, Anastasia, I know I've been reading in a lot of different places all over the web today, things that basically essentially say there's no way Victor Bout will not be found guilty. Talk a little bit about that and why people are so sure that this case has already been decided.
Well, you know, this is actually one of the most interesting points of this case, because many believe, the people who have been following this case, is that his guilt has been decided by the court of public opinion a very, very long time ago. Because, like I mentioned earlier, for a decade, this man was searched for. Hollywood movies presenting him as a villain were made. The mainstream media in the United States labeled him the Merchant of Death way before he even, you know, his trial even started. So certainly it's going to be very hard for you know, even though the judge made the jury sign a pledge saying they will not be Googling this man around trying to find out more about who he is, but that hasn't probably made the jury refrain from watching television and movies from which they would certainly know that the United States see this man as an enemy.
Very interesting stuff. RT correspondent Anastasia Churkina keeping her eyes on the Victor Bout case for us. Thanks so much.